Joe says no. Vice President Biden announces he will not run for the top job. This is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Chris Wallace in for Brett Baer. Vice President Joe Biden says his window to run for president has closed. Citing the period of mourning over the death of his son, Biden said he and his family could not come to a decision in time to make a presidential campaign work. The move seems to smooth the path for Hillary Clinton, who faces a crucial test of her own tomorrow. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry has tonight's top story.
Bo is our inspiration. Unfortunately, I believe we're out of time, the time necessary to mount a winning campaign for the nomination.
In the end, the gut check for Vice President Joe Biden was simple. Advisors say he wanted to jump in, but by the time he had gotten through the early stages of grieving his son Bo's death, he could not see a path to win the Democratic nomination.
I've concluded it has closed.
It clears much of the field for frontrunner Hillary Clinton, especially just 24 hours after moderate Democrat Jim Webb left the race. Clinton, with an eye on wooing Biden's supporters, immediately declared, quote, "Like millions of others, I admire his devotion to family, his grace in grief, his grit and determination on behalf of the middle class." It's telling Biden is not offering an endorsement of Clinton.
I don't believe, like some do, that it's naive to talk to Republicans. I don't think we should look at Republicans as our enemies.
A senior administration official said Biden made the final decision on Tuesday night, then decided to tell the world Wednesday with his wife Jill and President Obama at his side. On Monday, Fox News reported 3 people close to Biden believed, based on conversations with the vice president, he was expected to announce he was in. But the sources stressed Biden had not yet made a final decision to do so. And Biden sent the signal he was running in multiple phone calls with Harold Scheitberger, who runs the powerful firefighters union, and said this morning his troops were gearing up to elect Biden.
And our union is preparing as if the vice president is going to announce his candidacy.
Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders is now the only major alternative to Clinton. Today, he ran with Biden's theme of attacking Clinton's word choice in the first debate.
Strong differences of opinion, opponents. I wouldn't use the word enemies.
Biden said he will not be silent, as if to leave the door slightly ajar to be drafted if Clinton faces trouble from either the FBI investigation or tomorrow's testimony before the House Select Committee on Benghazi.
I'm confident that we'll learn more. That'll help us get to the truth about what really happened.
Democrats call it a circus, especially after House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy's gaffe.
I think she's very disciplined and capable and will come off well. And if the GOP members go too far, I think it could end up really backfiring on them.
And while things have clearly started to turn in her direction, Clinton is not taking any chances. She's been off the campaign trail since last weekend, spending several days behind closed doors prepping for tomorrow's big testimony, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Chris.
More on this with the panel. Ed, thank you. Now, from the presidential race to the contest to be Speaker of the House. It's been almost a month since John Boehner announced he will step down and leave Congress. And we still don't know who his successor will be. Ways and Means Committee Chair Paul Ryan now says he will accept the nomination, but only if the fractious GOP caucus unites behind him. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is on Capitol Hill tonight.
A day after Congressman Paul Ryan told his colleagues he was open to being Speaker of the House if they see him as a unifying candidate and on his own terms, retiring Speaker John Boehner offered this endorsement.
We all know Paul Ryan, right? He's a very good member. He works hard, he's very bright, and he has good relationships, I think, with all the wings of the party. So that's why I think he'll be doing fine.
Boehner set a vote in conference for 1 week from today and a vote on the House floor to select the next Speaker for next Thursday. Ryan said he'll decide if he will run by this Friday and laid out his vision last night.
The people we serve, they do not feel that we are delivering on the job that they hired us to do. We have become the problem. If my colleagues entrust me to be the Speaker, I want us to become the solution.
Ryan's terms are the next Speaker needs to be a visionary, and for the next Speaker to be successful, the House GOP must unify now. He's open to changing rules and procedures, and there needs to be a change in the ability to fire the Speaker, the motion to vacate the chair.
All right.
Ryan said, look, a speaker can't operate with a proverbial gun to his head all the time.
He's not asking to be anointed, so I feel comfortable with what he's asked.
The former vice presidential nominee says family still comes first, and he'd like to spend less time on the road than Boehner has, several weekends per month. Despite a call for unity, some members of the conservative House Freedom Caucus have their reservations.
The only concern that I have right now is that it appears that he's asking for more power to be in the Speaker's office instead of less power.
I don't think the speakership is a 9-to-5 job. I've got family. That's why I'm not running for Speaker or any other position like that. But you got to work on the weekends.
Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz immediately dropped out of the Speaker's race in favor of Ryan, but Florida's Daniel Webster says he is still running.
I am surely interested in being Speaker because I'm fighting against the way the process is.
In terms of addressing concerns of conservatives, the Senate's top Democrat probably didn't do Ryan any favors.
Well, he appears to me to be one of the people over there that would be reasonable. I mean, look at some of the other people. I'm a Paul Ryan fan.
Many establishment members I've spoken with predict there will be intense pressure on the Freedom Caucus to at least give Ryan a shot. After all, he was the last vice presidential nominee of the Republican Party. Chris?
Mike Emanuel reporting from Capitol Hill. Mike, thanks for that. This is a Fox News alert. Reuters is reporting the U.S., France, Germany, and Great Britain say they hope the UN Sanctions Committee will take what they call, quote, appropriate action in response to Iran's most recent ballistic missile test. Also tonight, Iran's supreme leader has endorsed his country's nuclear deal with the U.S. and its allies. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is calling for vigilance, however, saying the U.S. cannot be trusted. His approval is essentially the final word in Iran on the issue. While the bombs continue to fall in Syria, diplomatic efforts to end that country's civil war are accelerating tonight. Syria's embattled leader took a rare trip to Moscow, while America's top diplomat is scheduled to meet with his Russian counterpart on Friday. Correspondent Kevin Corke has the latest from the White House.
It was a long-awaited meeting between longtime allies as Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and Russian President Vladimir Putin greeted each other Tuesday in Moscow, Assad's first trip outside of his war-torn country since 2011.
I thank you for standing up for Syria's unity and its independence.
For Putin, the meeting comes at a crucial moment in the war in Syria, armed with the Syrian government's approval to launch airstrikes against both ISIS and rebel forces. The Russian leader's aggressive campaign burnishes Moscow's growing role in the region.
Following your request, we made a decision and provided effective assistance to the Syrian people in fighting international terrorism, which had started a real war against Syria.
Putin claims part of the reasoning for being in Syria is because at least 4,000 Islamist militants from the former Soviet Union are fighting there, and left unchecked, they could foment instability back in Russia. But the Obama administration quickly criticized the meeting. Traveling aboard Air Force One, White House spokesman Eric Schultz said, quote, the red carpet treatment for Assad and Russia is at odds with Moscow's stated goal of a political transition in Syria.
I don't see how Assad could ever unite and govern the country. No more than the terrorists could ever unite and govern that country.
The Kremlin's warm welcome happened on the very same day the Pentagon and Russian officials signed a memorandum of understanding to avoid an inadvertent clash over Syria as U.S. forces continue to target ISIS. The agreement calls for the two sides to keep a safe distance in the air and establish a communications hotline. There would be no shared intelligence, and the details of the deal would remain secret at the Russians' request. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, with the Syrians and even the Iraqis now soliciting help from the Kremlin to fight ISIS, doubts about Russia's true intentions in the region abound.
In the back of Putin's head, as he sees opportunities, if he also has the opportunity to poke the United States in the eye, he will never miss that opportunity.
Thank God there will not be a mid-air collision between a U.S. and Russian airplane, and we will really be able to observe carefully the killing of these young men that we trained and equipped and sent in. This is shameful.
Chris, Secretary Kerry will meet with Benjamin Netanyahu tomorrow as the conversation continues over how best to deal with the growing threat of ISIS. And speaking of, the U.S. coalition of bombing ISIS in Syria and Iraq is one country smaller tonight. Canada's newly elected Prime Minister-designate Justin Trudeau telling President Obama that his country will no longer take part. Chris?
Kevin Corke reporting from the White House. Kevin, thanks. Up next, you don't have to crawl under or jump over a fence to get into this country illegally. We'll look at how others try and succeed in doing it. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 2 in San Francisco, where the Board of Supervisors unanimously supports the sanctuary city policy. The refusal to cooperate with federal immigration law came under scrutiny after the death of a young woman allegedly shot by an illegal immigrant who was released by local law enforcement. Fox 2 in St. Louis, where officials are asking for the public's help in catching whoever is responsible for a half-dozen fires at African-American churches. Federal investigators say the person setting the fires is trying to send a message of fear. They are not saying if the motive is racial. And this is a live look at Chicago from Fox 32. The big story there tonight, the Cubs try to hang on in the National League Championship Series. The Cubbies are down 3-0 to the New York Mets, entering tonight's fourth and what could be final game. The Cubs, of course, have not won the World Series since 1908. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.